From Miller Waldrop Studios, this is Campus Live.
What's up, Campus Live fans? Logan here in the Miller Waldrop Studios to welcome you to another episode of the Guns Blazin podcast. I'm your host, Logan, with my co-host, Lane. Lane, how you doing on this Wednesday afternoon?
I'm doing great, Logan, and we got a lot of good content just around the college football world that we're going to talk about today, especially our big win this past weekend here in Lubbock. Texas Tech 42-17 over Kansas, and I'm just ready to get started.
Yeah, it was a big win for Texas Tech last week. We also had a huge week last week, as if y'all haven't seen yet, we had a big-time interview last week in studio for our inaugural episode of the Guns Blazin podcast. We had Kirby Hocutt in here, a great interview. Make sure y'all check that out on all of our social media as well as our YouTube channel, where this one will be posted as well. This is going to be more of kind of our normal outline of our Guns Blazin podcast. It'll be more of a, recap of Texas Tech sports, a look around the country. We'll be talking football, basketball approaching, so we'll have everything you need to know. But with that being said, Lane, we had a huge win. Talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, just another day, another 24-point win for Texas Tech. We started off the game very hot. We were up 21-0, and then Kansas did make a run there in the second quarter and cut it to 21-17 going into halftime. And I think, when you saw Baron Morton go down, go down, I think, the wind kind of went out of everyone's sails. And I think, we saw the most success against our defense that we've seen so far this season. And but it didn't matter in the second half because Will Hammond, Cam Dickey, all those guys, especially on our defense with David Bailey and Romello Hyde, they absolutely took over this game. And Will, he had his 2 rushing touchdowns. And then I think, obviously the story of the game was how well Cam Dickey played. He had 263 yards rushing on 21 carries for 2 touchdowns. And he actually was even awarded the Walter Camp National Player of the Week award for offense. So I think that just shows he got recognized big time for his performance. And even though we only threw it for 133 yards, we still had 505 yards of offense. So I think it just shows how dynamic this team is. We can win in so many different ways, Logan. And even though after our second quarter breakdown, the defense, they stepped up in a massive way. David Bailey and Romello Hyde absolutely took this game over. David had 3 sacks. Romello had 2 sacks. And I think you're starting to see them potentially play, obviously David, but even Romello play themselves going into the first round next year in the NFL draft. But obviously some bad news did come from the game. Barron, he went out with an injury, and Skylar Gill-Howard went out with an injury. But I think we saw some more positive news this week, at least from Coach McGuire on the diagnosis of both of those injuries. But we do get Chapman Lewis back this week in the secondary. He's going to boost in a group that's been amazing all year so far. And I think as we head into Arizona State, Logan, you're going to talk a little bit more about it. But so far, 6-0, just an amazing start to the season.
You can't ask for much better, especially with all the outlook in the offseason. A lot of question marks of how will this team gel together. They have. I think we talked about it in the preseason shows in our sports shows. David Bailey coming in the spring window was something that wasn't anticipated. Coach McGuire and staff had talked about, we have all the guys we want in the fall transfer portal season, but if we see a guy that is undoubtedly talented that we want, we're going to go get him. They got David Bailey. He now leads the nation in sacks. He's been amazing, one of the highest-graded defensive linemen, edge rushers. According to Pro Football Focus, just Ruben Bain from Miami ahead of him. Romello Hyde right behind him in third. You have 2 of the most dynamic edge rushers in the country. Arguably, it's pretty much not even arguably anymore. They are definitely the 2 best dynamic duo on the edges. And the crazy thing is Romello Hyde, before this season, came in, mock drafted, 5th or 6th round pick. He has already played himself into no doubt a second-round pick, but now he's getting talks of a first-round pick, late first-rounder. We saw David Bailey as high as 8th in the draft on one of the mock drafts. He's played outstanding. But, all these pieces are fitting perfectly. But like you said, defense saw a little bit of, I guess you could say they saw their most effectiveness against them.
Yeah.
With Kansas, Jalen Daniels had a really, really good first half against them. I think that the loss of Skylar Gill-Howard, just leadership, mentally, kind of put a wear on that defense. But A.J. Holmes, man. A.J. Holmes Jr. was amazing up front. A big sack on Jalen Daniels as well late in the game. He was just that force. Him and obviously Lee Hunter. Can't really talk enough about Lee Hunter. He's kind of now fall into like fourth on the defensive line in terms of who's being talked about, but arguably one of the best interior offensive linemen in the country. But we're going to start seeing a little bit of talking about across the Texas Tech program in terms of the quarterback situation. Barron unable to finish another game. We'll talk a little bit about this later, about Will Hammond having to finish his third game out of 6 at the quarterback spot. He was great. Didn't throw the football as effectively as you talked about, but man, can he run the football. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, he came in and ran for 2 touchdowns, and even though he struggled in the passing game, I think, you know, Kansas might have just came in with the approach of, we're going to stop your passing game, but I guess they thought they could stop our running game too. I don't really know, but
could not stop Cam Dickey to save their lives.
They couldn't stop anything, and you know, I think you saw it on the very first offensive snap of the game. There was a hole the size of the Red Sea that opened up that our offensive line parted, and Cam ran straight through it and scored. And you know, I just think it, like I said, it just speaks on how many different ways this team can win. You know, one week, you know, out in Utah, we struggled on offense basically for 3 quarters, and our defense kept us in that whole game. And then fourth quarter, offense takes over. We dominate and win by 24 points. And then in our other games, even though the defense is dominating those games too, you know, the offense has showed up in different ways, whether we throw for 400 yards or we run for almost 400 yards. And it just speaks to, I think, which we've talked about in all of our shows, just the level of buy-in that we've had on this roster. It's so deep. Even though Skylar Howard went out, we struggled for a little bit, caught our feet in the second half with A.J. Holmes and Jade Cofield coming in the game, and it didn't matter because
it didn't matter at all.
They pitched a shutout in the second half, and this team is just so deep, and it's just so impressive to watch. You know, it doesn't matter who you've played. You know, we catch flack about our schedule on social media and stuff all the time. If you're winning every single game by at least 24 points, and our last 3 games have been against quality opponents, you're doing something right. And I think, you know, heading into Arizona State this week, they're 4-2. I think, you know, preseason, whenever we were looking at this game, it was like,
this is the game.
This is the game.
This was the circle on the calendar.
Absolutely. And now, you know, it's still an absolutely huge game. Maybe it doesn't have the glamour that it had in the preseason, just based off of Arizona State's season last year and all of our preseason hype. But you know, Arizona State's still 4-2. They are dealing with a lot of injuries. Right now, they actually lost 3 starters to season-ending injuries this past week in Utah, but they didn't have Sam Leavitt, and they are going to have him back this week. I can guarantee you. This really is Arizona State's season. If they don't win this game, they're not going to make the Big 12 championship more than likely, and they're in wounded animal mode, as I like to say, for a team like this. They're backed into a corner. We're going to get their best shot, I can promise. And Kenny Dillingham is a great coach. He's going to throw the kitchen sink at us, and we have to be completely prepared. And I think you've kind of already seen how I think this game is going to be closer than our other ones that we've played. I think it's probably going to be our closest game, and you've seen it in the line movement in this game. It's weird. We opened it up as like a 5-point favorite, then it moved all the way up to 12.5. Now it's all the way back down to 7.5. I think you're going to see a really close game this weekend, Logan, and I think you're going to dive more a little to Arizona State and just what they might do this week.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think the main question is, it's almost a guarantee Sam Leavitt's going to play. We've seen it in practice.
Yeah.
From the outside looking in, Sam Leavitt is one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. He has arguably the best receiver in the Big 12 in Jordan Tyson. Both guys, when they play together, they're extremely dynamic, and it's going to be a challenge for the defensive backs for Texas Tech, who we really haven't seen that dynamic receiver on the outside through these first 6 weeks. We're going to see our first test. I'm really interested to see if Bryce Pollock is following Jordan Tyson this week. He hasn't had to. We've had enough depth on both sides of the football, and no one that can really, stretch us out and beat us over the top. This guy can beat us over the top, but I think really where you're going to see he's going to have a lot of intermediate routes, or he's going to play on the edge. He loves to go to the go ball, but if Sam Leavitt plays like we all expect him to, almost a guarantee, he's going to be the main target. If Jeff Sims plays, this is going to be a completely different ball game, and Texas Tech will run away with it if Jeff Sims is on the field. But the way that Sam Leavitt plays the game, he's going to keep this game close, like you're saying. Now, it may still be a Texas Tech win by 14.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't shock me if we won by 28.
Yeah.
They got blown off the field. Their defense got blown off the field by Utah. We know how good Utah can be. We stifled them, and so we're kind of an outlier on Utah's schedule because they've dominated everybody else they've played. But I just think, like you're talking about, it's Arizona State's season. If they don't play well against us, then they're pretty much out of things, and their season's going to be seen as a failure. You're going to lose Jordan Tyson. Pretty sure you're going to lose Sam Levitt as well, and now you're rebuilding. We'll see what they throw at us. I just think it's going to, like you're saying, it's going to be a closer game than people think. And I think we're going to talk about another game later, speaking of Utah and BYU, which is arguably one of the biggest, probably the biggest Big 12 game this week. But this game is nothing to look past if you're a Texas Tech fan. And at 3 o'clock on Saturday, it's going to be a game to remember, I think.
It's going to be a dogfight, and we have our live show on Saturday, which will go way more in depth on everything at Arizona State and just our prediction for the game and everything like that. But as a precursor to the game, this is going to be a dogfight, and I think you could see a similar game the way how Utah was, where close for 3 quarters, and then in the fourth quarter we pull away, or maybe Levitt makes a few mistakes like Dampier did. And
yeah, if he's not 100% healthy, and you see that defensive line with 3 offensive linemen out, I mean, I think what I wanted to add when we were talking about Kansas a little bit, both offensive tackles, 0 pass blocking grade, according to PFF.
It's unheard of.
And that is all because of David Bailey and Romello Height. It is unheard of. There had only been one other 0 grade tackle in the country this season. They had 2 in the same game. That's tough, especially with a wounded quarterback with a bad ankle and 3 offensive linemen that are out. We'll see how that affects them up front.
Yeah, I think there's a scenario like you're talking about where it could be another blowout where you're talking about, hey, we won again by 24 points plus because our defensive line dominates them so bad that they just can't even move the football. But I just think, Kenny is a great coach, and I have a ton of respect for him. And like we spoke about, they're going to throw everything they have at us. So I think they're going to score some points. Now, do I think they're going to win? Probably not.
No.
Yeah, no. But we'll talk about that more on Saturday. But it's going to be a dogfight. But I'm really excited to see how we play, though.
No, really. One more thing to add on the Arizona State front is, I don't know if you saw on Twitter what their field looks like right now.
Oh,
they had a mini hurricane, it looked like, go through there. It is tore up. All the banners are all over the place. Ground Crew's going to have a tough job ahead of them because, I mean, this is a big game. It was flooded on the field. I mean, I know it was on Monday, but, I mean, for that kind of field work, I'm interested to see what it looks like there if we're, slipping, falling.
Doubt.
I mean, that's another aspect to this game that doesn't really favor us very much because of the speed off the edge. We need to be able to push off the ball. But again, it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, what outlook, what team they provide on the field. Texas Tech is clearly the better team.
Yeah.
We've showed it all season. We walked into a more hostile environment in Utah and pretty much dominated. Utah, 3 quarters, it was close. Defense dominated. But the question I have for you, Lane, is what does the quarterback situation look like? Because that's a big question mark for Tech. I know we, as Texas Tech fans, are real high on Will Hammond. He's the future. But the outside media is not as high. That might have a little bit to do with the line moving. Yeah. We haven't really gotten any updates on Barron. I know they said he practiced on Monday, but we really haven't heard anything else on him since. Is this kind of a closet let's not put anything out there? Let's not let Dillingham scheme for one quarterback. Let's make him scheme for both. What do you see there?
Yeah, I think, like you spoke about, I think that's why you're seeing such uncertainty in the line movement and why it's jumping
all over the place.
7 to 5. Like that doesn't happen if there's not uncertainty. And I think Dillingham, the great coach that he is, he's going to prepare for Will Hammond to play as well, because if he doesn't, that's
just not smart.
That's just not
smart.
We've
seen the track record that Texas Tech has.
And I think one of the craziest stats of the whole entire season is when Will is on the field, we're actually averaging 7.5 rushing yards per attempt, like per play,
which is insane.
So if he's not preparing for Will to at least have some capacity in this game, even if Barron does start, Will has still seen snaps in the games that Barron has started ever since the Utah game. But I think Barron, I think he's going to play. He has practice as far as we've heard this week. But I think it's going to be very interesting. It's it's a good problem to have when you have two good quarterbacks. You know, one is a little bit better at running with Will. One is probably more polished passer with Barron. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's going to be very interesting because as the Texas Tech coaching staff, I feel like you're doing a disservice to the team if you're not letting Will Hammond take at least a quarter of the first team snaps. We saw him struggle a little bit passing the football. Not a lot of chemistry. I know we got the whole fall or spring, with these wide receivers, but to not play with them every day, it's a little different. I think that he brings a different aspect to the game, and to be able to play both of them like you're talking about, it's going to change the game. The one thing I will say is when Will comes in, if Barron does start, he needs to be a threat passing the football.
Yeah, for sure.
We cannot run QB draws all the time. And then you're going to stack 11 in the box, no threat to the outside, because he could sling it.
Yeah.
But if you're given that threat, we saw the read option absolutely dismantle the Kansas defense on Saturday, running the read option, him and Cameron Dickey. I'm thinking here, we don't even talk about Jacoby Williams, but he averaged almost 6.5 yards per attempt.
Yeah.
I mean, that is insane, but is overshadowed by 10 yards a carry by Cam Dickey.
Yeah.
It's a guy, again, we talked about this multiple times. How good is Quentin Joyner? How good was he to solidify himself as running back one with these two guys behind him and what they're doing right now?
Yeah, and I think it's just what we spoke about this whole entire season with the depth. There's just so much depth. And, Coach Dillingham in his press conference this week, he actually spoke about how last year we beat them, and now all of the guys, for the most part, that beat them last year
are not there.
Are backups or not there.
Right.
And especially on defense, a lot of the guys that were starting last year, besides obviously J-Rod and Ben, they're backups. And
that's a scary thought.
That's a scary thought. Especially for Arizona State. They're walking into this game, they're like, we don't have Scattaboo this year. And they really dominated us last year. I know that the score was 30-22, so it looks a little bit closer, but that game really was not that close for the most part.
The two late touchdowns is really what makes the score look better. But Scatterbo was basically contained the whole game.
Yeah. And
it's crazy to think about. That's a great point.
And you see how he's playing with the Giants right now. Like the guy should have been a Heisman finalist. He meant so much to that team, and I think you're seeing the effects of it this year, which they are 4-2. It's not like they're
not 0-7.
Yeah, they've had a good start to the season. They've had a tough schedule, but I think they're going to be facing a different beast this weekend with so many guys that they've had out on the offensive line. With this week going against our defensive line, I think they're going to be facing a different animal. I think obviously, like we spoke about, it's going to be close, but yeah, I'm really excited to see this game. It's going to be a great one.
Yeah, they're facing arguably probably the best Big 12 defense that's come out in probably 15 years.
Yeah.
That's how good Texas Tech defense is.
Yeah.
And you want to go ahead and transition, or do you have someone else to add?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to go around the country. We after speaking about Texas Tech and Arizona State, there was some huge news this week, and there was a great past weekend of college football besides the Texas Tech game. And James Franklin, he got fired. Logan, what do you think about the Penn State job and the potential candidates there?
Yeah, that was something I thought was coming, but not this quickly. I think, the loss against UCLA really hurt in a different way. As a Penn State fan, you were, 1-2 plays away from beating Oregon. You lose to Oregon. At the time, great loss. You're still looking at a college football playoff appearance. Then you go to UCLA and you really don't compete very. The score looks like, okay, Drew Aller kept you in the game, but UCLA looked dominant in that game again, looked dominant again last week, so maybe a different beast out there in Los Angeles. And then you come and you lose to Northwestern, and it's very interesting because you were one play away from a national championship appearance last year with James Franklin. You brought back almost the entire team, all your core pieces, and except Abdul Carter, obviously, which obviously was a pivotal part of them. But you didn't really – the expectations were extremely high for a team that I don't think was that great. That's personal opinion. They're good. They're not elite. The Ohio States of the world, the Oregons of the world, we've seen that they haven't been able to get over the top with James Franklin. But is there anybody that can take that job to that next level? We're going to talk a little bit about some candidates here in a second. I know you got a few. I got one main guy, and he's a Texas guy. A lot of people here in the state of Texas know this guy. But Matt Rule, think he's going to be the favorite to land this job if he wants it. Does he want the job? Nebraska looking like a pretty decent job, a lot less pressure for him. He hasn't really, again, he's building them up slowly, but he hasn't had to have a national championship contender. He goes to Penn State. Those fans, the boosters, they expect a national championship.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. Penn State is, to me, their fans kind of act like they're top 5 in expectations every year, when in reality their history is they're more of a 10 to 15 type program. And I know
no problem. Good 10 to 15 is good. You'll have that one season in the top 5 like you had last year. Go ahead, but not every year.
Right, and the success, I mean, even though he got fired and they started 3-3 and this was supposed to be their year, James Franklin did win there, and he won a lot. He basically averaged almost 10 wins a season there. I just don't know if you can upgrade from that. And at that program, you're always going to be second fiddle as long as Ohio State is dominant. Now with the Big Ten the way it is, with Oregon in there, I think, especially now this year with Indiana, I mean, with Kurt,
they look like a new powerhouse coming up.
Exactly.
They really do.
And with Kurt Signetti there, with the NIL they've dumped into that program, they have a ton of big donors. I think a lot of people don't really realize that the Indiana, they got money, and they're using it.
Yeah.
And
everybody always thought Indiana basketball, that's all the money was poured into. That's not the case anymore. I know they got a lot of money for DeVries coming in, but Kirk Signetti has pulled a lot into that program. Fernando Mendoza, man, that is a guy that I think is now a top 5 pick. He solidified himself.
Yeah, and Signetti, with no matter where he's been, he's always been an amazing quarterback developer and a talent developer. Obviously, even though they did retain, obviously, Elijah Surratt, they got Fernando Mendoza from the portal, and they've added other pieces in the portal. They've also still evaluated very well. It kind of reminds me of how Matt Campbell has evaluated Iowa State, and he doesn't have nearly the NIL support that Indiana does. But I think that Penn State, even though this was supposed to be their year, I just don't see how much better it can get for them. I struggle to see a scenario where unless they somehow pulled Lane Kiffin somehow, or if they pulled Signetti from Indiana, but I don't think those scenarios are very likely. I think you're right. I think Matt Rule is the person they're going to target in on, but Matt Rule has a great job right now. Why
leave?
Why leave Nebraska's not no pressure, but Penn State is way more pressure, in my opinion at least. Nebraska hasn't been dominant since the 90s. Penn State, even though they haven't won much, they have been relevant for the past 15 years.
15, 20
because
years.
of James Franklin being there.
Large portion of it.
And I just struggle to see a scenario where they upgrade very much. And I'm not saying, they should have sat there and let James Franklin just sit there for 25 years, but I think that their fans are underestimating how their program operates, and especially in the atmosphere of the Big Ten and the college football landscape that it is now. And hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they get Matt Rule and he makes them national championship contenders every year, because they do have a ton of talent, and they clean up the East Coast in recruiting just like Ohio State does. But I don't know. That's just my opinion, Logan. I know you have a similar stance if you want to continue on that, but I think Penn State's going to struggle to find similar success.
Yes, you brought up a great point. They think their program is more prestige than it is. They think that they can pull any coach in the entire country and they will leave the job and go to them. I don't think that's the case. Kirk Signetti would be the dream hire for them. I think he's going to use them to get a raise. In NIL funds, in his own salary, that's what's going to happen. I think it's Matt Rule or Matt Campbell. I think it's the Matts. I think that's all that's the two you got to focus on. I don't really think there's a lot outside of that you could really, think. I mean, maybe you go, but you can't go unproven, right?
Yeah.
At that rate, you fire James Franklin, you have to make a splash. I know there's reports they're going to call for Marcus Freeman. Don't think you're getting that guy either. I would be shocked if he leaves. But then we're going to start talking about here in a second about potential jobs that are about to open up. I mean, there's some big names out there that might be getting dumped in this next week or two.
Yeah, I think you're about to see a few people I've seen online have referred to it as like the 2008 economy crash, where just like all these coaching jobs start opening. We already see some pretty decent size. I mean, Arkansas, that's an SEC program. Oklahoma State's already open.
UCLA is open.
UCLA
I know
is
it's
open.
UCLA, but it's still Los Angeles.
And it's still in the Big Ten. I mean, obviously now with Penn State,
Oregon State. I know their job is not really relevant, but now you're going to a new Pac-12. Now you could be a Group of 5 giant.
And obviously the rumors of Florida opening up soon. I think that's
Florida.
I think that's the job too, where Penn State donors and officials are like, man, they probably wish Florida was good this year, because now they're going to be competing with, in my opinion, a better job, a more prestigious job, and especially if Florida wants to go after Cignetti too, or maybe if they even want to take a look at Matt Rule.
That is a good point. I do think you brought up a good point. They are the much better job on paper, yes. I do think they have the knife. I think they top Penn State in almost every category. I do think that you're going to see maybe a more South, reliance in Florida of what they're looking for. But I think, like you said, Kiffin has got to be the guy. You got to go after Kiffin.
And we'll see if,
But then that opens up a ton, because Ole Miss is a good job as well.
Yeah.
Penn State now just going to start falling down the pecking order because, there's some names,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say, but if Baylor starts to struggle, now Baylor's open. Not saying that they're a huge job, but these are just competition on competition. It's going to start a carousel all across the country, which who knows where it ends up.
Yeah, and Napier, he hasn't been let go yet, so we'll give him that small benefit of the doubt. But
Close enough.
yeah, but I think ever since NIL has started, we haven't seen much coaching movement ever since Lincoln Riley obviously went to USC and Brian Kelly went to LSU. Those are huge jobs that opened up. Penn State and Florida, those are huge jobs.
Can I ask you a question? Do you see a huge name like that that's not on these lists jump like Lincoln Riley? Lincoln Riley jumped overnight. Do you see a guy that's like top of his game jump ship? Do we see another Brian Kelly jumping ship and maybe he goes to Penn State? LSU is starting to he's getting warm.
Yeah.
He might not be hot, but he's getting warm with the team he's supposed to have. Do you see him jump ship again? And now we're in a whole different atmosphere of conversations, because LSU would be the job then.
I think complete like doomsday scenario. I think, which we'll talk about this game in a second. I think if you see Oklahoma struggle the rest of the year, because they have the toughest schedule in the whole entire country the rest of the year, at least in my opinion, I think that you could see that job open up, which if the Oklahoma job opens up, all bets are off, because that job...
They got everything. They got prestige, they have money, they have NIL, they have the players.
Yeah.
They can recruit. They have it all. Anything you'd want on paper, they have.
And I'm not, obviously, there's so much season left. They're 5-1.
They're still looking for a playoff berth.
It could go in so many ways, and I think Brent Venables is a good coach. But I think if you're talking doomsday scenario where there's absolute chaos, I think that's a potential scenario if, say, they finish 7-5 or 6-6 again, especially with, they brought in John Mateer and
brought in Jaden Ott from California. He's not really
even
producing.
playing,
You got John Mateer battling back from injury. You got Peyton Bowen on the back end on defense. You got a lot of big name guys. You have arguably your best defensive line that Oklahoma's ever had, and you're still not getting there. You're right. Perfect. Perfect scenario.
And I think you saw it in the game. Texas, even though they struggled in the beginning, I think Sark had a great game plan in that game, and Mateer, all the Heisman build-up and everything. I know he's coming back from injury, but 3 interceptions, and it really could have been like 4 or 5. He had a few balls
a lot of drops on defense.
Once again, this is the 3rd year out of 4 where Oklahoma has not scored a touchdown in Red River. Like, that is
It's like Ryan Day at Michigan.
Yeah.
Thank the Lord for him that he won a national championship
Yeah.
because he was on the way out. I had said it earlier in the year. If he loses to Michigan, he was out.
Yeah.
But he redeemed himself. If he didn't win at all, we might have been talking about the biggest job opening last year. Who knows where we're at?
Yeah, and I think that, man, this job market, this coaching carousel, I think it's going to be crazy.
I want to throw one thing out here, and
Yeah.
this will be the last thing we kind of talk about. We'll kind of move into it.
Yeah.
What if Clemson continues to fall?
Yeah.
Does Dabo get out?
Yeah.
You know, he's going to start getting some pressure. I mean, you have Cade Klubnik.
Yeah.
You should have won. You brought back a lot, and you finally used the portal.
Yes.
Everybody's like, okay, you're the number one. I think we had talked about it. We
Yeah.
both had him in our championship
We
game.
did, yeah.
You have not played well. Does he jump ship if a Brian Kelly goes to Penn State, or you see maybe Oklahoma opens up and throws money at him? I mean, it's going to be I would love for some of these things to happen because it would make for a very interesting offseason. But as long as they don't touch our coach,
Yeah.
then I don't really care. Especially,
too, I think Clemson and Penn State have had really similar seasons and the preseason hype. I mean, they basically both returned all their production from last year. Obviously, they had a few guys go to the league, and now, though, I mean, especially if Clemson, which the ACC obviously is a lot weaker than the Big Ten, but say they finish 7-5 too. Like you said, if Dabo, if they have a mutual parting of ways, that could potentially be Penn State, Florida, Oklahoma, Clemson.
I mean, these are big names,
massive
big
jobs.
brands. Yeah.
And
No, I
now,
agree.
obviously, this is
all dream scenario for me.
Doomsday scenario where this happens. But if that were to happen, can you imagine the portal craziness too?
And guess who gets to capitalize?
Texas
Tech University.
Yeah.
Arguably, that would be the greatest portal opening
Yeah.
probably of all time. Like, I mean, you're talking about names that we're talking about first-round picks that will be leaving
Yeah.
left and right. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a very good offseason. But that's saying that these teams continue to struggle,
Yeah.
obviously. But I see a couple of them continuing to struggle.
Yeah,
Florida's.
and-
I'm pretty sure that Napier's about as certain as it gets.
Yeah.
After that, we'll see. Now, we're starting to talk about where's DJ Lagway going to go, because if you don't hire the right coach, he's going to be coming back to Texas. And where do you send him? Does he go to A&M? I mean,
We'll see. Yeah, that's
I love Will Hammond, but does Tech give a look? I don't know. I mean, that's something that
that's something that
it's something they look at.
that's something that they potentially could look at. And I think that in this college football landscape, there is nothing that's off the table. And I think the craziness in our sport nowadays, you're seeing it play out on the field. I mean, you see obviously our success this year, and then you see last weekend Indiana go and dominate Oregon at Oregon. Like, if you would have said that 4 years ago, hey, Indiana, they're going to be the number 3 team in the country. They're going
with a case to be the number 1 team. Like, they have a case, a real case.
They're going to go into Oregon and they're going to dominate them. You'd be like, you're crazy.
You're insane.
You would have sounded like a Texas Tech fan from 5 years ago.
You would sound like a Penn State fan saying we're
Yeah.
going to win the championship this year.
Yeah.
That's no.
Yeah,
I agree.
in Indiana and Kurt Signetti, I think he's got something really special building there. I think that, with even though his name's popping up, I think it would really take a lot for him to leave Indiana. And man, Fernando Mendoza and just Elijah Surratt and all those guys that they have, their defense played awesome. And man, I think that this year is so wide open. And then obviously that game, and then obviously the way that Alabama's bounced back too this year. They held off against Missouri, and Missouri made a late push, but man, this is a team that got dominated by Florida State week 1, and now they could arguably be the best team in the country right now the way that they're playing. I think this season's just so wide open, Logan, and what are your thoughts on just how wide open this season's been?
Yeah, there's no domination like we've seen in past years.
Yeah.
We've seen the Mac Jones led Alabama team, we've seen the Joe Burrow led LSU teams, where you knew, okay, they're going to win it all,
Yeah.
unless something drastic happens. This year, you don't have that. I mean, arguably Texas Tech is a legit I mean, we thought, yeah, we could make the playoff, but you're looking at a legit championship contender. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to win the championship. I'm not going to say that, but you have a team that could compete. It is wide open. I think that you're going to see as we come down the home stretch, you're going to start see some of these teams separate themselves. I think, especially when we start seeing some head-to-head matchups. SEC, you got some big games this weekend. Obviously, Alabama and Tennessee, and then you got Vanderbilt as well in their game, and then Ole Miss and Georgia.
Yeah.
That's going to separate a lot of those teams. You're going to see if Ole Miss and if their quarterback, their D2 phenomenon, is going to continue to play well. They did not play well last week at all. So we're going to start seeing these teams kind of pull away, and we'll really see who's the more superior teams heading into, the last month. November football is going to be very exciting. So it's wide open. You're right, 100%. I don't think there's any clear foot favorite. Obviously, Ohio State, you're the reigning champions. You haven't lost. You deserve to have the favorite. You should be the favorite. Miami's no slouch, and obviously Indiana is arguably one of the best teams, if not the best team right now. And Texas Tech's right in that category. I just think it's a crazy, crazy time to be alive.
And it's just the landscape of college sports right now. I love it. It's if you would have said, like we said, 5 years ago, even 4 years ago, all these Indiana, Texas Tech, you're even seeing teams like Georgia Tech. They're 12th right now and 6-0. None of these teams, NIL has leveled the playing field so much that I think it has made this sport infinitely better. You're seeing it in the ratings. Last year there was only one game that had over a 10 million people watch rating. There's already been 7 games this year that have had 10 million people watch. You're seeing the expansion of college sports and the equaling of the playing field because everyone feels like they have a chance to win on Saturdays. And I think you're going to see it this weekend as the beginning, like you said, of the separation of the
elites to the really goods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, it starts with Ole Miss, Georgia. This is going to be a heck of a game. Kirby Smart versus Lane Kiffin. It seems to be always an amazing matchup. These guys coached Alabama together. They have history together. Lane Kiffin, he always has his funny remarks in the press conferences all week. He made a pretty funny one about Kirby Smart this week, actually. But you're seeing Trinidad Chambliss go into Athens and top 10 matchup. I think that's a really, really interesting matchup. And then, obviously, like you spoke about with Vandy, Diego Pavia, what do you think their season looks like against this game against LSU, but potentially the rest of their season looks like?
Oh, that's a hard team to judge, man. Diego Pavia he's the real deal. They're an interesting team.
Yeah.
They compete against almost everyone. I just don't know if they're in that elite category. They're I'm thinking probably a middle of the pack, upper middle pack SEC team. I think that you just got too much talent at the top. I mean, you got A&M, you got Ole Miss right now, obviously Alabama, Georgia. I mean, you're talking about those 4 solidified. I mean, then you bring in Texas, maybe, possibly Oklahoma. I mean, you got schools that, right now I'd probably take ahead of them, but they're really good. And this could be a week that they make that statement and say, Logan, you need to shut up because you're wrong. But we'll see what happens. But another big game for them.
Yeah, and then obviously USC and Notre Dame. USC had a huge win over Michigan last week. You're going to see – I think that's going to be a great game this weekend. I think, too, with Notre Dame, if they lose this game,
they're out. I agree.
A 3-loss Notre Dame team with their schedule, they're not getting in. I think that's going to be an absolute war. I think USC, honestly, has had a good – I know they had their hiccup against Illinois, but I think Lincoln Riley's maybe starting to figure things out there at USC. I think – another thing, too, like how we talked about with Penn State, if Lincoln figures it out there, that's just another opponent you have to go against every single season in the Big Ten. That job is just...
I think the one thing that's going to stick out, and I'm interested as we bring back, if we're going to talk about Penn State, talk about it real quick. They have the easiest schedule in the country next year in terms of Big Ten.
Yeah.
They don't go to Oregon. They don't play Oregon. They don't play Ohio State. And they don't play Indiana. So does that give a little bit of a boost to a coach thinking, I can go in there and win the Big Ten because I don't play any of the superior opponents. Something else that's a little off topic, but that's something I just
Yeah.
to touch on. But Mekhi Lemon, man, that guy. That's a top 10 pick, the receiver position, and then Jaden Mailava has been great. He's another Lincoln Riley product. He finally gets his guy in there. Miller Moss getting out. He gets his guy in there, plays him, develops him, and now you got a guy that's throwing the ball across the yard. Again, don't really have the best defense. Again, better than he had at Oklahoma. Still not great. I do think Notre Dame wins this game, but it's going to be a lot closer.
Yeah, and then obviously we have our game, big game.
Tech all the way.
Yeah, Tech all the way. We'll obviously on Saturday y'all have to tune in and we'll have a more in-depth breakdown. But biggest game in the Big 12 this week, the Holy War, the first ranked Holy War game with Utah and BYU in 17 years. This is a huge one. I think the winner of this game plays us in the Big 12 championship. I think
that's some big things with the way Cincinnati's been playing.
Yeah, and hey, Cincinnati, I think they have a really manageable schedule, but they do have to go to Utah. So if Utah wins this game, BYU has to travel here. They have a really tough schedule the rest of the way.
Yeah, if they lose, they're not beating us here. I don't think they're not beating us here no matter what. But you're right. This is going to be a big game for them. Utah's better than them.
Yeah,
I watched them last week against Arizona. Noah Fafita, man, great bounce back here for him. Arizona just doesn't have the talent anymore. Bear Bachmeier and Devin Dampier. That's where the game is going to be won. And Devin Dampier, in my opinion, is superior. But Bear Bachmeier, man, for a freshman, that kid's legit. But I'm just ready to see him come to Lubbock and face that defense. Good luck.
Yeah, and like we said, this is definitely going to be, I think, what decides who we play. I think this game and then obviously Utah and Cincinnati. But yeah, man, I'm just really excited for another great week of college football.
Yep. That's going to wrap things up here for our episode of the Guns Blazin podcast. Again, I'm Logan. This is Lane. We'll be here every week to give you updates as well as some guests coming in the studio. Again, here in the Miller Waldrop Studios that makes this possible as well. So make sure y'all tune into our Instagram, Facebook, also our YouTube channel. We'll also have clips across all platforms as well. So make sure you stay tuned and stay up to date with us. And as always, wreck 'em.
Wreck 'em.